Welcome to another discussion presented by Patrick Bilby Calagahan and Renzo Luis Ejem. This time, we will be discussing Client Web Server. So, what is a Client Web Server? How does it work? A Client Web Server is a computer program that distributes web pages as they are requested. The basic objective of the web server is to store, process, and deliver web pages to the users or client. Now, on this rightmost box, it shows the request steps in handling a client. So the steps are the following. First, it analyzes the requests. Second, it checks that the request is authorized. Third, it constructs the response message. Lastly, it transmits the response message. Now that we've introduced what is a client web server, let's proceed to the client code and the server code that we created. And this part will be discussed by Mr. Renzo Ejem. Oh, by the way, before we proceed, the link of our GitHub will be shown in the pinned comment and in the description below this video. Without further ado, let's proceed to our client server algorithm.
Now that we are done to the definition of the client web server and how does it work, we are going to be moving on to our program for our client web server for our midterm ready for operating system. So our program is about displaying or transmitting or generating the current time and date when it is going to be run. So in this program, there are two classes: the date server, or basically the date client, which is where we are going to be requesting, or where the request is going to be done. So I will be explaining both of the classes on how does it work. So let us begin with the date server. So basically what the date server does is that it is where we are going to be handling the client's request. So I think my partner has already explained on how the client web server handles its client's request. So the first step was it analyzes the request itself, if the request is acceptable. Second is checking the request is authorized. So how do we check if it's authorized? Is we are going to be using this integer variable, which is the port. Basically, this is our socket, which is which is the endpoint for our communication, and it is also the process of communicating over network. Where basically, what this does is that it will help us connect the date server to the date client. So as the port is the port works similarly to a physical port on your computer, which allow us to communicate with the peripheral device such as our keyboards, mouse, connect with the internet devices via Ethernet cables, and etc. Basically, what this does is, or the main function of the port is to be able to connect to the date client and the date server. So the next step is constructing response message. So after getting or analyzing the requested request from the client, and after it will be check that if the request is authorized by getting the port number. So if the port number is the same as the port number in the date client, as you can see here, the port number is 6969 and the date server also has 6969. So after that, it will try to analyze the request from the client if it's going to be accepted. So as we can see here, the server socket is being called as sock. So if the port is true, so if the values of the port is the same as the value in the date client, it will succeed it will continue to transmit the requested values or requested from the client, or request from the client, which is the current time and date of the on the time of the execution. It will show the current time and date. So if the request is being rejected because of the fact that the port is not the same, it will simply just show an error, or simply show that it is not connected because the port or the request is not acceptable. So that's all for the date server. Now we're going to be moving on to the date client. Now in the date client, and as I said earlier about the date server, where in the date server the request is going to be processed or handled, the date client is where the request is started, or basically the date client is where the request start and where the request will also end. Because after the request is successfully accepted or rejected, the date client will receive the transmitted output if it's accepted or not. So in here we have assigned in the date server in the date client, we have assigned the port number, which is 6969, and it is the same as the port number in the date server, because as I said earlier about port being very important for it being important, because this is where we are going to be this is the pathway, or this is the key point for us to be able to connect the date client and the date server. So now we have assigned that the port is 6969. We have assigned also a string variable which is a host and string variable name is the local host. So it just simply make it so that we have a name for our host. So, and it's still the same in the date server, where it has a socket and socket, and sock is equals to new socket and host and port. So the difference between the date server and the date client is that the date server is where the output is going to be generated, and the date client is where the output, or the output of the date server, is going to be shown or displayed. Or basically, it simply just shows the transmitted or generated request from the date server. So after getting the socket or get input stream, or which is basically we get it from the date server, and then after if the line, which is the line is equals to the what we call this, the output, or basically the output of the server, which is the current time and date. So if we try and run the run and program, it will simply show us that, as you can see here, it has server is successfully connected, and it shows here that hello user, today is Tuesday, April 19, 5:56 p.m. PST 2022. So as you can see, the program or the ClientWeb server works, and it just simply shows that the client's request is accepted. Now if we try to change the port, if we try to change the port into a different number, let's just say 1010. Now if we try to run the program, it will just simply show that the connection is refused, or the connection is refused to connect. So basically, it just simply shows that the date server, or the server, or the date server and the date client must be connected to the same port for it to be able to be successfully transmit the message or the requested value from the date server. So that's all for our midterm PIP for operating system. God bless us all. Thank you.